That's the thing. You can never really you can never measure muscle. Try saying that really. You can never measure muscle growth. You have stored body fat. Stored body fat can be used as fuel, and you never train properly in a sense of we're training for hypertrophy. So going from where you were before to training for hypertrophy, actually pushing yourself in your training versus being stuck in your head, second guessing everything. When I did look at those photos, you can visibly see that there's muscle mass. Hello, and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Has the scale got a tight grip on you? Do you look at your progress photos and nitpick yourself every week, every month, comparing the photos, wondering where the hell is this change? I'm working my ass off. What else did you use to say, Michelle? I'm working my ass off. I've been doing this for years. I expect to see more. What else? What else? Feed them all at me.
I expect to see my body changing more. I expect to see more muscle. I expect to see a bigger change in my body when I kept comparing picture after picture.
You needed to see these changes week to week, month to month, that there had to be, because you were comparing, you were always pulling up photos. You were always just saying, oh, I can't believe I haven't built any muscle. I should have built muscle by now. And even just before I clicked record, you're like, I know I haven't built much muscle, which I called you out on and showed you visible proof. What was your idea of you should be seeing more by now? And where did that belief come from? Like, tell me more about that part in particular.
Well, I mean, I started 10 years ago and obviously have lost a lot of body fat, but I was powerlifting and lifting heavy. And, you know, in my head, I'm working so hard, I'm lifting these heavy weights, I should have more muscle. And yeah, the strength, but the work I was doing, because when I came to you asking if, you know, you'd help me out, be my coach and write my program, you came from a powerlifting background, you understood. I realized my lifts were strength. And yes, I was strong, but it didn't build muscle. I mean, of course it built some muscle, but you know what I mean. It's built some muscle, but it's not like the type of muscle I was thinking. I wasn't working on specific muscles other than my strength, right?
What about my approach and me in general made you see me as the answer in that?
Your background, you came from powerlifting. You listened to your podcasts. I'd watch you on stories, and you just seem to know how to get the results, your programming, and how to lift in a way to build muscle. And you have helped me a lot with changing from powerlifting to more hypertrophy, doing some of these lifts that I haven't focused on.
Yeah, and this is the biggest misconception with the way that people do their training. Michelle came from a background of trying absolutely everything, and she wanted to lose fat, build muscle. Like, she was sabotaging herself with the negative self-talk, fuck it moments, if it's not perfect. There was the whole deficit focus all the time. Like, when am I gonna lose fat? When am I gonna see the scale go down? When am I gonna see my body shrink more? And we're going to talk about that because in the last 4 weeks in particular, Michelle has seen the biggest body composition changes, the biggest fat loss changes that she's not seen in like this extent her whole life, all because of this particular approach. And that, especially if you're a female over the age of 35, it's the only way for you to get a result that actually feels good and allows you to live your life and not be obsessed over the scales. Because this lady, I got her off the scales. I got her mostly away from comparing her progress photos. That is the most liberating feeling in the world, because you're not constantly needing to have yourself on 24/7 surveillance because you're freaking out that you're going to lose all your results, get fat again. You're going to fear gaining that back. And I did not even come from an overweight background, and I had all of those fears that I was going to go back to where I was. I was going to go back to all of my old habits. I was going to just become lazy. If you go through this approach, you will truly start to take on this new identity, just like Michelle has, especially in the last 4 to 6 weeks. Now, with the powerlifting stuff, this is the biggest issue, because a lot of people feel like if they just train heavy, they're going to build a lot of muscles. I also see a lot of people doing strength training programs. Had 2 clients actually come to me doing a particular app that was very strength focused, but very, very minimal work that I could see conducive to hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is a whole different ballgame, and no one really plays it properly, which is why there's a lot of people doing these quote unquote bulks and bulk and cut cycles and trying to build, but they aren't building anything except maybe some extra body fat. And especially if you're someone who puts it into your behind, you feel like you've grown glutes and then you diet and then you lose them. This is the issue, because training is the only thing like builds the shape that you want. Miss Michelle came to me and we had to talk through some of these beliefs around powerlifting and building muscle, because obviously when you're going through such a big change, it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? So I want to understand more around that, and especially around the single leg work that we incorporated and a few of the exercises and structure we incorporated, and go from there.
Yeah. So I remember the first time you had me do single leg work, Bulgarian split squat. And I thought, well, I'm strong. I power lift. I should be able to do this with, 50-pound dumbbells or more. And it didn't happen. Um, I noticed how one of my legs was a lot weaker. We all have a weaker side, but pretty weak. It's just been so beneficial to focus on some of these lifts as I've gotten older, with balance, with strengthening, and what exactly with the single leg work should I, talk about? I mean, I really thought I should be a lot stronger than what I was, but obviously this is a hard move, and you need to bring your expectation down. It messed with my head for a while. It did.
Can I just say, this is exactly where a lot of people fail. And if you've listened to the podcast that I did with Tracy, which is going to be the one just before this one, she never did single leg work because she sucked at it. She was bad at it. She couldn't balance. You're not challenging your balance. Hold on to something if balance is the issue. But because you're weaker at something, you usually avoid it. Because you suck at something, because you can't put a lot of weight on something, you avoid it. I remember there was someone who avoided doing single leg press because they were just pressing the plate. And I'm like, well, no shit. Just because you can leg press 200 pounds with 2 legs doesn't mean that you can do 100 with one. Like, it's really freaking hard. And if we don't understand what these exercises, what progress is meant to look like, which, let's face it, no one's ever been taught how to do body recomposition. No one's been taught the key to big body recomposition, how to train for results. It's all been, let's just get the scale down, because body recomposition is around the training. And you've come to realize that.
Yes, I was obsessed with the scale. That messed with me for a long time. I mean, coming from being really overweight, that was a measure that I would use, the scale, and that's what I would focus on. So learning to let go of that. I don't weigh myself anymore. I don't care about the number anymore. It's how I feel, how I look, how my clothes fit. It's been a lot healthier for me and my mindset.
I want to know more about that part, because when you're trying to focus on taking your training to the next level, yet there's still this looming, I need to lose fat in your mind, that still holds you back from giving your absolute best in training. Because I know that you can tell the switch. If you actually reflect on it now, I want you to use it, because we've never really reflected on that mindset shift in when you really truly stop thinking about the next fat loss phase, stop thinking about getting leaner, the scales, how that shifted training.
Yeah. I was, I was eating at the higher end of maintenance, which messed with me as well. And obviously it gave me fuel to perform, but I was still focused on the scale and fat loss. And, it's so hard. It's like you want to build muscle, but you got to eat and lift heavy, but then you're focusing on fat loss because you want the scale to go down. And that's where, everything blows up, and you just, it becomes this cycle. And of course, it's taken me a long time to get here. And, I don't care what the scale says. I had to put trust in my body. Control the controllables is what you have always, helped me through some hard times and just, feeling bad. I only got 3 lifts in, not 4. And, because I've always been so dedicated to getting every single thing, check all the boxes. So if a box isn't checked, it was like, oh no, I failed. Oh no. I'm not going to gain muscle or, whatever it may be. So my mind has, played a lot of tricks on me and the way I would think about things. So um, I feel I'm in a better mindset of understanding, um, my goals and what to focus on and what to let go of.
What to focus on and what to let go of. I think that last line that you just said is really key, because it's not just what to focus on. You can have your hands really full and have things under your arms, just like most mums do, most busy women do. It's that metaphorical carrying all the everythings. And then you try to focus on something new, and it's always going to flop because you don't have anywhere to put it. So it's going to, and if it doesn't fall, then something you care about is going to drop off in the end. And that could lead to resentment even more, because it was something that was valuable to you. And that's, like I spoke about in so many podcasts, Good Heart's Law, where the goal becomes so much in your fixation that you forget the real reason you're doing it. And so the way that you go about it is leading to the very things that are leading to a lesser quality life, because now you're trying to get by on like 1,500 calories or burning yourself out. You have nothing left for your kids and for your relationships. And now the one thing that actually gave you a sense of purpose just falls away. And then all of a sudden you're picking on yourself more. And like, if you don't have self-awareness, you don't realize all of this stuff is happening either. There was a part there that, oh, okay, thank God I wrote it because I forgot. You want to build muscle, but you also want the scales to go down. But you want to build muscle, but you also want to lose fat. But you want to see your body change on the week-to-week basis. Well, exactly as I mentioned, this was Michelle's downfall over and over again. And the amount of times that I would just say, I don't want to see those photos. Don't stop taking the photos. Stop comparing the fucking photos. Like, I know you need to do it for content, but just stop. Like, that was my biggest thing with her, because the more you focus on it, I don't think it is clear enough to people, just because it seems stupid just telling someone to stop comparing photos. Like, no, I want to see, of course you want to see changes. You're human. Of course you want to see results for the work that you're putting in. You're human. But at the same time, it's going to always be your downfall, because again, if you don't understand the realities of progress, I did a podcast on this, it slows down to the point where you can't even see it, and not until you look back like years after years. And many times also you have to realize our bodies, our everything fluctuates up and down. It's not always going to be linear, because you're a human. Like, yeah, okay, you can isolate yourself in a friggin' lab. You can rent your kids on eBay. You can just not worry about relationships and just dedicate yourself to a well-structured program, well-structured diet, and voila, you'll just keep improving because you're dedicating yourself to that. But if you're someone who also lives a normal freaking life, then it doesn't work that way. You can always be improving in some way. That's why you need to have purpose to this. If it always is just for this A grade, A plus grade HD rating, you're going to let yourself down. Where you said, I can't do 4 days, and you felt like you were failing. I remember how much it stressed you out, and it still stresses you out, of course, because that is what you were so disciplined to for most of your life. And this is where women entering perimenopause fail, because the only reason that the old discipline does not work here is because you have more responsibilities. You also have to care for your in-law family if you have in-laws. You have to care for your parents if your parents are going through, well, they will be going through those elderly, senile stages. And you're going to want to spend more time with your kids if you have kids. And you're going to want to pursue your career and hobbies. You're not going to have time to juggle absolutely everything. 4 sessions is amazing to me. It's about how you do what you do, and realizing just because you're not progressing in that week does not mean it's not doing anything. When you turn 30, you're losing muscle if you're not trying to build it. So everything you do is maintaining. Maintenance isn't passive. It's a lot of effort. The fact that you're showing up and training hard, maintenance doesn't take a lot. only no one knows how to freaking maintain, because if it's not seeing this massive progress streak, then what's the freaking point? So they're either progressing or regressing or undoing it all and then having to do it all over again. But this gets me to something that I really wanted to lead into later on about you cannot build muscle and lose fat at the same time, but you can build muscle and lose body fat percentage at the same time. The goal is staying within the same, like, I'm not even going to talk about body fat percentage because there's literally no accurate way to measure it. DEXA is completely inaccurate. I'm sorry, it is not the gold standard. It is completely inaccurate. No matter how many times you go to the same machine, it is still completely inaccurate. And even the trends over time are inaccurate, because it's just like comparing something that is inaccurate to something that is inaccurate. That's like 6% on each side. It could easily be like 12% on each side kind of thing. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Trying to build muscle and lose fat at the same time is going to have you focusing too much on, okay, but I need to see the changes, but I need to see myself getting leaner. And no one talks about this part enough. And I think this is where you got a little construed in this. I do want to go back to more of the training, but I think this is the key element that we need to show why this freaking matters. So then we can go into the training. And this is my little soapbox, I'm sorry, but it's just so important. If you're wanting to see these changes, which you're going to want to do if you're losing fat and building muscle at the same time, and you're already freaking impatient as it is, you're not going to see happen. Nothing. And you're probably not even building muscle at all doing that. You're doing just enough to maintain. Because if that is your sole focus, what exactly are you focusing on in your training? Are you really pushing yourself? Are you fueling yourself enough to recover? Because I know right now, for example, I complain to Adam all the time about how shitty my lifts are and how I'm not progressing, because I'm eating barely maintenance right now. And that's just because everything is lacking so much routine around me. Here I am, someone that was always looking forward to a surplus, which I am once I have a routine that I can fit things into and I know how I'm going to show up to things, because you don't just put yourself into a surplus unless your training is there, because just eating more food isn't going to build muscle. That's why bulk and cut cycles suck. And that's why you need to put yourself into a lean build for long enough. And if you always want to diet for summer, that isn't going to work. Like, yeah, cool, we can do like a bigger surplus so that you can go into a diet for summer, but you're still not going to build all that much. You're going to get some extra body fat that you're then going to lose for summer. Whereas if you just did a lean build and kept doing that over time, you will see the results you want once that all accumulates. And then we lose body fat, which is really easy to do, and maintain the muscle, really easy to do. Body fat, fast to lose, muscle, slow to gain, which is why it always feels like you're not going to see results. And then you expect to see muscle changes and you're never going to see them until you compound it over time, because it's literally that minuscule. It's just like, look, I got an extra hair strand today. Can you tell, Michelle? Can you tell?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no. And the same thing with, do you measure your hair with a tape measure to every single millimeter? Do you do millimeters there?
No, inches, or I'm the worst with math. Centimeters, inches.
Yeah, there's inches and then there's centimeters and then these little tiny things. So I'm just going to call them sub inches, because it's not sub inches. So like tiny inches, like the little tiny things. They're let's just say millimeters. Are you going to measure every little millimeter of hair to get to a certain little decimal point to know, okay, it's time to cut my hair now? Or are you just going to look in the mirror and say, okay, I know I need to cut my hair now? Because you don't need a scale or a body fat percentage to really tell you how confident you feel in your body. And it's never going to do that for you. However, changing your whole body composition will, and that only comes through training. Training is the only thing that does that. But you need to know how to train. And Michelle, she knew how to deadlift and squat and bench and be a powerlifter, but she didn't know how to train for results. We had I'm going to say argument, but it wasn't an argument. We had arguments all the time about trying to get her to use freaking straps. Like, fucking use straps for women. Like, straps, deadlifts, RDLs. No over and under grip. Like, just no. Okay, cool. You can do one set like that, but then do your normal sets for like straps. Like, it's freaking important. And the amount of times I'm still telling my girls, I don't care if it's a 7 kilo or 7 pound dumbbell. Use straps, because it's not just about supporting you with heavier weight. It's the whole connection to the weight. It's okay, I'm not thinking about my hand now. I'm thinking about the muscles that I'm working. And it completely changed the game for Michelle. So tell me about that belief and anything similar to that has shifted.
Yeah, I guess I started out with the regular straps, I don't know, not the Versagrip, but the what are they called? The can't even think of, just the longer strap, that you strap
Oh,
around the
I love those. They're my favorite. I reckon they're the top ones. They're better than Versa grips in my opinion. But yeah.
well, they're not my favorite. And I tried that with the
Can I just say, if you're someone that has these straps, if you're someone that has these straps and you're trying to wrap them all, Michelle did, I think it was you that did this, wrapping them all the way around to make sure it's all the way around the bar so that there's nothing dangling off. No, you don't need to do that. You really need to wrap it around once. Like let
yeah.
it dangle.
I
That's
have
why you
both.
hated.
I have both straps, and I do like my Versa grips, and I use them now with deadlifting, which you would have never caught me using straps deadlifting when I was powerlifting. It was like, this is my grip. I'm strong. Can hold this bar. My lifts probably did suffer because of all the weight. And, when you're doing like 10 deadlifts at a very high weight and your grip. But anyhow, I now use my straps all the time. And I fought you against that for a long time. And now I see how they're beneficial and I use them. But we did have they're
What
like,
did you
use your straps. I'm like, I don't like my straps. I don't want to use my straps.
what did you notice since using the straps in especially back moves, but most of your work?
Yeah, I'm not focusing on my grip or my hands, and I'm able to try to connect. I'm still learning how to connect to my muscle, mind connection. Some of my muscles, it's hard for me to get there, but I do try to focus on that, and that has helped.
Yeah, that's the point. Like you're training those muscles. And if you can focus on those muscles and know how to recruit them, that is what changes the game. Like, yes, effort matters a lot. And you need to stop aiming for textbook form. But if you don't know how to load the right muscles, then it doesn't matter how much effort you're putting into it because it's not focused effort and you don't have a meaningful way of progressing. Plus, you're going to get injured. So when you learn how to brace properly, Michelle already had that down pat. She knows how to brace because she had to do that for powerlifting. So she was in a great place for us to get the results in hypertrophy training. She knew how to lock and load. That is the thing that is going to drive the needle in terms of, okay, well, I can actually load things without worrying about breaking my back. I can let my form deviate and my back bend without it being an issue because backs bend, there is nothing wrong with it. So there was that. And then there was also the way that we structured like reps and stuff like that, where you can be really used to just training in the lower rep ranges. But then when there's these higher reps, I can't remember exactly your intake in that, but I do know there was a little element of that before.
Yeah. Well, working on lower body is always messes with my head and the higher reps. I'm fine with upper body, but lower body for some reason, it probably because it's hard. Let's just face it, it's hard and it messes with my head. And I'm like, 10 reps? Are you kidding me? Like, you know, there were some that you also then would be like, okay, 8. I'm taking the pressure off of you. And when you would do that, yeah, 8 was a lot better than 10.
Yeah, and knowing there was also with the squats, this is going to be one of the other things that I think is really key for you guys. You don't have to barbell back squat. Like no one has to barbell back squat, but when you want to barbell back squat, and it's something that always intimidates you, something I do see all the time is that we can put so much pressure on ourselves to perform to a particular level. This is where we need to also come to terms with what progress looks like, because if we're going to show up to something and I need to beat the logbook, what else was in your mind that made you struggle with that?
With the squat itself, I had, when I was doing meet prep, I had an accident with the squat. Like I didn't have the safety bars on, no one was spotting me. And then my coach, who was strong but little, like we had this accident with the squat. I missed it. And so that has messed with my head.
This is where like the number one key to success in body recomposition is learning how to fail, because you need to take yourself to those failure reps, and most people do not push themselves there. Michelle is one of them. I started setting her weights because she always had doubt in her head. Now I want to know about that.
Doubt in my head about the weights?
About pushing yourself particular weights, and then when I would challenge you on some weights and then you got it,
Yeah.
like the leg press.
Yeah, when it's hard and it sounds heavy, it's more mental. When you challenge me, I push myself and I can prove to myself I can do it. But just thinking about it and knowing how hard it is, I'm always questioning things in my head. That's my problem, is my form. And, we've also had this talk before. You said you're too in your head with the form, with, the move. I'm just always in my head. Get me out of my head. But form and weight, and I just want it to be perfect in my head so that I'm gaining muscle. If I'm not lifting a certain way, am I gaining muscle? Is this doing anything?
I actually love the way that you said that, because it's so true. If I'm not doing this perfectly, then am I actually building muscle? If I'm not pushing myself and progressing, am I actually building muscle? And this is kind of what I said before as well, where just because there isn't this, okay, well, I'm definitely building muscle. Well, what's the alternative? Losing muscle? Because you don't just maintain by doing nothing. Everything you do is putting a brick in the sand, and you don't have to be perfect to get there, but you do need to be putting in hard effort. And there was something that stood out to me with your training in that sense, because when I gave you the weights for the leg press, you were like, I was already struggling with this, but then every single week you were progressing on that and it looked really smooth. And I'm like, well, I want to see you freaking fail. But that you are capable of so much more than you realize. And this is where you need to be okay with failure. Get yourself to a place where you can fail the leg press and show yourself, hey, I'm actually safe failing a leg press. I'm not going to die. So that would be my advice there. But then you asked me questions on two particular lifts, and this is something that's going to stand with a lot of you. This is the key to progress. This is the only way that you're going to build muscle, that you're going to get the results you want from your training. Stop overthinking what something has to look like, what yours looks like, and what's the best way to have this and this and this, and trying to compare it to a form check video. Form check videos are going to let you down. Getting your form check from someone who isn't your coach is going to let you down. I have plenty of examples of people that went backwards from asking advice for their form because they only gave advice from their perspective and knowing what their body does. The key is knowing what your body needs for that exercise, because your body is made different. You have different body leverages, different history, different experience with particular things. So you've developed strengths and weaknesses in particular areas. But above all, do you know how that exercise works? Do you know what muscles it's working? Do you know how those muscles work? Do you know where they're attached? That is all that matters. Because then when you're doing an exercise, you think about, what does this muscle need to do for the desired result? So you're doing a lat pull down. What does that need to do? It needs to move your shoulder blades. It needs to actually get a full reach and a full squeeze down here. So you're doing the lat pull down like this, and you're bringing it all the way down. You're not doing this rounded shoulder thing. And the same with rows, which is something that Michelle has come so far on, which is what I was celebrating with you before. I'm keen to see you do it on the lower bench now as well. But she was just rowing it before with her arms, and the shoulder blades weren't doing anything. What are you rowing for? You're rowing for your midish back. Yes, your lats also. So what you need to do, you need to reach out with the lats without losing tension, and you need to bring shoulder blades back first, because it's the shoulder blades you're working. You're not working your arms, so you're not pulling the thing. Your shoulder blades are pulling it. And then you're going to follow through with your elbows, which is the next joint, and you get the squeeze. That is what it's supposed to look like. For some people, when they're doing a lat pull down, they may not be able to get all the way down to their chest without their shoulders rounding over. So if you're trying to compare yourself to someone else and your shoulders are rounding over, you're going to cause some injury to the tissues there, because that's where the load's going, not in your lats. So that's applicable to everything. And then there's the Bulgarian split squats in particular, because some people have long torsos, some people have long femurs. You'll naturally have a more forward lean, which is where I struggled with showing my form to my girls, with showing my Bulgarian split squat, because too many of them were purposely trying to lean forward they're I don't know, like your back, like leaning forward the way that the glute gurus, which is the stupidest way to do Bulgarian split squats, do their stupid glute focused glute stuff. No, I just looked like I was leaning forward more than a typical than I wanted Michelle, especially because she does not have long femurs. She's very evenly proportioned. You didn't need to lean over that far, but because I was leaning over that far, I'm guessing you assume that. So no, it's not trying to overthink what something needs to look like. It's what do you need to experience? What do you need to feel? What, like that. And then once I get that training feedback, then I can help guide you. I can't just form check a random video without knowing what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, etc. Tell me your experience on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would send you things and does this look good? And you'd come back, well, how did it feel? Where did you feel it? So learning to connect with how I'm feeling and where I'm feeling it versus just in my head, the form, has, helped me improve and move forward with a lot of lifts.
I want to know what you thought though in that, because me giving you that answer didn't sit well. I'm guessing it didn't sit well because when I got it,
I was like, what do you mean? Well, how does it look? Like, I'm sending you the video, is my form right? Do I need, again, nitpicking myself and, how it should look and versus how does it feel? How does it feel is more important, which it took me a couple times to realize then how does it look? And that's what you always came back with. How did it feel? What muscles were you feeling? What were you thinking? Versus, I can't tell by just the video.
Yeah, and I feel like, well, I don't know if anyone else would agree with this part too, but when you're going to ask a question to try to understand why, like what you should expect from something, what something's doing, and you just get, well, you go in and tell me what you feel, because I used to get that a lot. It's just like, well, how about you go and try it and then let me know? It can kind of feel like, well, I'm kind of wanting, like, I'm asking you for a reason, but at the same time, we already know what placebo is as a starters. It's probably not really, like, you might think, well, placebo doesn't like work here. No, it actually does. And at the same time, it's taking away from you learning how to tune into what it actually is doing for you. That is actually a super, super important learning part of the process, because without that, you can't expect to progress, because then how are you going to apply that to other exercises? How are you going to string together everything else in a way where it's rewarding? Because if you're only doing things for this end outcome versus I'm actually feeling this now, that's the only thing that keeps me in the game now. I enjoy like feeling things out, and then when I don't feel things, I get like really shitty at myself. When things don't feel right, I get shitty at myself versus the logbook, because it's just like I want to like experience things the right way, because then I know I'm creating tension. And then when you make the goal, keep the maximum amount of tension on the target muscle. That is when you get results. And that is not the goal of powerlifting. And that, like, powerlifting, it's just move as much weight as possible no matter what. You're not really thinking about anything else. So it's normal. And then there's all of this bullshit on social media saying you can get away with 2 sets. You can get away with 1 set. And then I had one of my clients come to us saying that her coach got her to do 2 sets. I'm like, well, 2 sets is going to do jack shit for you because you don't use those 2 sets properly. Like, no, like when you're someone who is of a super advanced level, who is lifting really freaking heavy shit, then yes, okay, you need 2 sets because they're highly fatiguing and you're using them effectively. So it's what do you need with where you are right now? And I want to sum the training part up in that sense with muscle is really freaking slow to grow. If you thought fat loss was slow, just wait until you're trying to build muscle. And you want to know what's even slower? Probably non-existent, probably over time leading to the opposite of what you want, trying to do both. Because you're going to end up flip-flopping. You're going to end up losing motivation because you're not seeing anything. Versus if you go all in and learn where to focus when you're building muscle, it changes the game. And the next thing that led to the biggest change with Michelle, which now we're going to go into the nutrition. I want to know anything that you want to bring up with this as well. But the first part is you need to stop focusing on the scale, on wanting results ASAP. And even though fat loss is the goal, what have we been not focusing on that you've been so used to obsessing with? I want to just introduce it with that, and how much that has changed the game in and of itself.
Focusing on, you mean my progress photos, the scale,
You already know.
even though I was eating in maintenance, I still had a diet mindset because that's where I lived for the last, I don't know, 8 years. Well, we've been working together, 3-4 years. And I've been working at maintenance with you. There was once I think I tried to go into a fat loss phase a couple of years ago, and that didn't last very long. I just mentally couldn't do it. But I've had to learn.
But you already know why. You already know why, and I told you that. Okay, cool, give it a go. But I already know that this isn't going to work, because even though you've been actively, like, the active parts have not been in fat loss, your mind has never left it.
Right? Yeah, it hasn't. And it shrinking, losing more body weight, and that was in my head, along with I need to build muscle. And it's such a, like you said, you can't do both at the same. I mean, some people can, but I am not at
no
way or all
that
to.
Unless you're an elite athlete, I would say no one can, not unless you want to sabotage yourself. The only time that if you really want to, maybe if you're a newbie, yes, because you can grow muscle doing anything and lose fat. But also when you're a newbie, that's the only time that you can make so much progress. I wish that's probably why I got to where I am now. All I wanted was the scale to go up when I started. So I had myself in a surplus for the majority of it. So I built a shit ton of muscle, and I put on a lot of weight with that. And a lot of it was muscle. But at the same time, when I did my first fat loss phase, I was tiny. And here I am thinking that I put on all of this muscle. I don't think people realize that you don't just put on muscle, you put on kilos of glycogen, not really kilos, but still in kilos, like 2 or 3 kilos, maybe 4, depending how big you are to start with, of muscle glycogen and water. And then there's the blood volume that you're now holding more of just in general that we don't account for. But I will still argue that you can't do both at the same time unless you're an elite lifter, because life structures deloads, there's that. But at the same time, what are you describing as lose fat? I keep saying at the same time, losing fat and building muscle, because you can lose body fat percentage and build muscle, but not lose fat in general. It's just that you're slowly building muscle over time. And with that, your body fat percentage changes. And that's just going to be a really slow burn. And that's okay if you're willing to put in the time for that, which is a really good option as well. But then there comes a time where you're going to have to be okay with eating a little bit more. But I would never put a client into that until we built enough self-trust in themselves, which takes, with Michelle said this already, we've been together 4 to 5 years. A lot of that has just been trying to get her away from freaking progress photo comparing. Most of that has. And this, it's not even a laughing matter for you guys out there listening to this. I want you to realize I understand how freaking hard it is. I'm not making fun of it. And getting away from
we spent a lot of time with those progress photos. I wish, I would have focused more on the process versus these progress photos. And
and you don't, that's the thing, you don't understand this stuff. You don't wish for this stuff until the very end, until you look in retrospect and it's like, hey, look at all the progress I could have been making if I didn't approach it this way. Look, I wonder where I would have been by now. I wonder where my physique would have been by now if I didn't waste all of that time keeping myself on lower calories, if I didn't waste all of that time obsessing over the things that took me away from feeling good, away from learning how to lift, because now I just wasted years and now I have to actually learn how to lift because I understand that this is the only way to actually do it. It really eats at you, and that's not what you want. And I just want to emphasize, this is not saying, and like I said, it wasn't a laughing matter, because it's not. It's difficult. It's hard. I don't expect you guys to master it overnight. But the thing is, it's not about me being patient as a coach. I think as soon as you remove the expectations that you think coaches have of you, if you get a good coach, you can go really far. someone who actually understands. Because I know there are a few coaches out there that do treat you like robots, that do treat you like, okay, I just want photos, I just want weigh-ins. Most coaches do, but that isn't going to work. Like, I know that that is what's going to get them, hey, look at these before and afters, or that's their only way of knowing how to coach, but it really isn't going to progress you long term, because unless you get away from those metrics, how are you going to succeed long term knowing that those things don't always change? That building muscle isn't going to be seen in a scale or photos for a very long period of time. And there is no real way of measuring it to the nth degree like it does. DEXs are not accurate. You can pay for an MRI. They're a lot of money, and you can do them every freaking year. But like I said, are you measuring your hair to the nth millimeter to know when to cut it? Because it doesn't matter what you do if you're not creating the environment, the identity of someone who actually feels good about themselves in the process. You're never going to feel good about yourself. And Michelle, no matter what she did, she was beating herself up over and over again until like the end of last year. And it was when she had an epiphany last year. That was what changed everything for her. It was that epiphany. Like, how many years later? 4 years later, the epiphany, everything changed. It's like, unless you could have given up. You know that meme where they're hacking away and then the person gives up right before they hit the diamonds? That is most people, because they're not patient enough to wait the process, because they don't understand just how important this work is. And that's why I'm emphasizing it. And I want you to emphasize it, because I'm the coach. You're the one who went through it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a hard part too was learning to trust myself and where I came from. I mean, I was 80 plus pounds more than I am. And I thought, you know, going to lift less or, you know, eat at the higher end of maintenance, I was just going to go back to my old self. And, you know, I tell you a lot, oh, I'm feeling, you know, a little fluffy, I'm feeling, you know, bigger. You know, it was from eating more carbs, my lifts. But in my head, I was like, oh no, you're going back to where you were. I
What's
obviously,
back to where you were? Can you explain that part to me?
well, 10 years ago, I was 80 to 90 pounds heavier, no muscle. I never worked lifting, nothing. You know, my background is yo-yo dieting. And, you know, I've had so many where I've lost, you know, 60 pounds, gained back 60 plus. I've had a few of those. And, you know, I just thought that's what was going to happen. It's hard sometimes to trust yourself and know that what you're doing is, you know, I'm not that person anymore. You kept trying to tell me what are the facts? What makes you not that person? You know, I'm like, well, I'm walking every day. I'm, you know, eating protein and vegetables and, you know, tracking what I eat. And, you know, I'm not who I was, even though in my head, you know, feeling bigger, fluffy, and I'm going back to that old person. And you would reel me back in. No, you're not that old person. What have you done? What are you doing that has made you who you are today? And, you know, it's really hard when you have gone through like the background I have to, you know, trying to build muscle and eat more,